Forget the original 1960 XK Falcon. It was this, the 1964 XM, that was the most important Falcon ever produced in Australia. And that's because it was the first to have significant Australian engineering input. A lot of that engineering input happened here, Cape Catastrophe, south of Port Lincoln in South Australia. So welcome to Australian motoring 1960 style. We're in a 1964 XM Falcon, kindly loaned to us by Port Lincoln young bloke Matt Kaiser. This particular one is a deluxe model with a Pursuit 170 engine. So it was the middle of three engines available, about 111 horsepower, which doesn't sound like much, but in its day, this is the equivalent of, say, the Falcon XR6, not a turbo, not a base model, but a popular mid-range model, a sporty version of the Falcon of the day. It's not completely original. This one's been painted red, matching interior trim. This car was green. As you can imagine, a car of this age, it's by modern standards archaic. The drum brakes, you really have to give them a squeeze, especially if you've been dragging them down the hill. The steering wheel is full of slop. There's a bit of body roll. There's tyre noise, there's wind noise, but that's what I love about this car. It puts you back 50 years, it relaxes you, you change your mindset, you drive it accordingly, and it's just a beautiful car to drive. The 2-speed auto is fantastic. So the reason the XM is so special is it was the first Australian engineered Falcon. It wasn't the first all-Australian Falcon. That didn't happen until the XR later in the 60s. But when this car came out in 1964, and this is one of the earliest examples, this car had 1,500 changes over the original US designed Falcon, first sold here and built here in 1960. It was based on an all-American design with no changes whatsoever. Reliability is woeful. Ball joints breaking, clutches failing, chassis cracking. It just wasn't suited to Australian conditions. So what Ford did was convince its parent company in the States to spend £1 million, which in those days was massive. They also convinced it to build a proving ground in Australia for the first time to develop the Falcon to make it reliable and sustainable in Australia. But before that happened in Lara, outside Geelong, they didn't have a proving ground. So they brought it here to Cape Catastrophe in Port Lincoln to test all the changes they made. Among those 1,500 changes was wholesale stuff like redesigned suspension, strengthened chassis with gusseting and bracing, a thicker rear axle, beefier suspension, but a whole bunch of incidental items. New steering wheels, thicker windscreens, electric 2-speed wipers, things like that that made it more suitable, more durable, more reliable in rougher Australian conditions. And it worked. The XM was much more reliable. Although they didn't build many, the XP was subject to a 70,000 mile durability run at the Yuyang's Proving Ground, which by that stage had opened. It was a publicity stunt, but XP sales took off. But this is the car that started it all. I love driving this car. So while the XM might seem antiquated by today's standards, the improvements made in this car set the blueprint for 7 generations of Falcons to come. A lot of the guys who came here to develop this car back in the 1960s aren't around today. But this car lives on as a legacy for the work they put in right here in Australia.